I want to talk about sharing and remembering. I live in New York, where we just had the 10th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. And that gave me occasion to think not just about what happened, but about how deeply the way we experience events has changed in the 10 years since. The World Trade Center was sleek and futuristic. You wouldn't have been surprised to meet Captain Kirk and Spock in the lobby. The towers were as much a product of the 60s as Star Trek, but not the lawn-haired, dope-smoking 60s, the technocratic 60s, the 60s of Apollo 11, of the first man on the moon. The design called for 2 towers, each 110 stories tall, but with windows that were less than 50 centimeters across, because ironically, the architect had a fear of heights. Each tower formed a square footprint, 63 meters on a side. Of course, no one imagined that less than 30 years after they were finished, the towers themselves would be a smoldering ruin, or that the footprints would be transformed into a watery void. As humans, we're defined by our memories. Without them, we have no identity. We have no place in the world. But historically, memorials have been a shrine to things we'd really rather forget. We put up a statue, and our memory is transformed into cold, hard stone. We've done our duty, and now we're free to move on. All that changed 25 or 30 years ago with the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. There was nothing heroic about this memorial. It was just a granite wall with a lot of names engraved on it. But those names encouraged a kind of private contemplation, because each name was capable of triggering a flood of memories. So at the 9/11 Memorial, the pools are ringed with names. But this time, they're not just in stone. Now the names come with faces and identities, and the memories are shared online. It's all very different from our experience of Vietnam and of 9/11 itself. Those events were broadcast to us. We received the broadcast simultaneously. But unless we were there, we shared them only with our immediate friends and family. The 9/11 Memorial has been designed to create a social memory, a memory that can truly be shared. That's one way our remembrance has been changed, but an even bigger change is the voices that make up our memory. In 2001, we experienced the attacks through images and stories that were provided by a small cadre of professionals. In 2011, our memories are supplied by a much larger group of people. A few years ago, the memorial put up a website called Make History to encourage survivors and onlookers to tell their own stories. Some of their images were combined with Google Street View to create an augmented reality overlay, like this view of the tunnel leading out of Manhattan, overlaid with a photo of a 35-year-old fireman running the other way, abandoning the truck that was stuck in traffic in the tunnel, propelled by a sense of duty and responsibility, racing toward his death. Then there's a third change in our experience of collective memory. Aside from our ability to share our memories more widely and the multiplicity of voices we can hear, it's how we get them. No longer do we have to watch a display in a museum. Now we can take the display with us on a smartphone. The 9/11 Memorial partnered with local projects, an interactive design company headed by a New York entrepreneur named Jake Barton. Local projects created the Make History website and created the Experience 9/11 app. You can use it as a tour guide when you visit the site, or you can use it to recall what happened moment by moment. You can even look at the street and get an augmented reality overlay on your phone, just as you can on the website, except that now you're not looking at Google Street View, you're actually looking at the street. The memorial also partnered with a remarkable startup called Broadcaster that was founded a couple of years ago by an ex-snowboarding champion named Scott Lindenbaum. Broadcaster enables anyone to record their stories, to tie their stories to a location. So the stories live in a sort of a fourth dimension, at the intersection of space and memory. You can view these stories on the web, or you can hear them on your smartphone as you walk down the street. Like the fireman talking about his experience of being buried in a pocket in a stairway in the North Tower, realizing he wasn't dead, pulling concrete dust and broken glass out of his mouth, and crawling toward the light. What the memorial has created is a plethora of memories, to sum it up as you choose. These memories have equal status, whether they're recorded by professionals like Kelly Gunter, a freelance photographer for the New York Times, who saw the first tower in flames from her Brooklyn apartment, then raced down to the promenade overlooking the river, captured the second plane as it was about to hit the South Tower, and after that, lost her appetite for news photography. She became a wedding photographer. Or whether it were recorded by people like Maria Iturez de Torres, who snapped this photo in her apartment in Barcelona. Okay. Who snapped a photo in her apartment in Barcelona as the South Tower exploded in flame, a few blocks from where her son lived on Maiden Lane. Or Erik Tolson, engineer visiting from Denmark, who snapped this last photograph of firefighter Gary Box racing through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel toward the towers. Or George Moronis, who snapped this photo after walking down from the 48th floor, subsequently described his experience on the Make History website. Going back a week later, seeing the iron fence around St. Paul's churchyard lined with flyers for missing persons, names and faces. Recognizing the face of the fireman who had patted him on the back as he was making his way down the stairs, and then breaking down into tears because he realized that seeing this fireman's face on the fence meant the fireman was dead. Stories are how we process information. They're how we make sense of the world. They provide the signal within the noise. In 2001, the tools of storytelling were still restricted. There was no Twitter, no Facebook, no Make History, certainly no broadcaster app. The decade since has seen a powerful shift. No longer do we have stories, only have stories that are told to us. We also have stories we tell each other. In the process, the role of media has shifted. In talking today, I wanted to ask, what if? What if we created memorials that were not for forgetting, but for remembrance? What if we shared our memories instead of merely receiving them? What if the author and the audience were one? Because they are. It's already happened. From the bombings in the London Underground, to the devastation of the earthquake in China, to the uprisings of the Arab Spring, roles have shifted. The role of the broadcaster is not just to listen, but to speak. The role of the audience is not, the role of the broadcaster is not just to speak, but to listen. The role of the audience is not just to listen, but to speak. What 9/11 really taught us is that we're all in this together. And what the anniversary is teaching us is that it's nice to be able to talk about it. Thank you.